welcome to Solosaurus, a podcast about one-player board and card games. My name is Brandon Waite.
And my name's Carter Mackey.
And this is episode 49, where we are talking about a game about space culture and victory points, Tiny Epic Galaxies. This was a game that we have been asked to review many times, so we're looking forward to doing that. But before we get into that, we are going to start, as we always do, with the news. And the news this week is brought to us, as it usually is, by tablefor1.me. It's a website that does a wonderful job aggregating solo games news. That is headed up by Frederick Schultz. So thank you very much, Frederick, for all the wonderful work that you do there. If you haven't checked out tablefor1.me, you should. It's a great way to keep up with everything that's happening in the solo games world. And our first bit of news that we get from that site this week is that Fantasy Flight Games has announced a bizarre new expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG called Barkham Horror.
I can't believe that they're actually making this.
I can't either. It's so good. Apparently, if you are not in the know, this started out as an April Fool's Day post from Fantasy Flight Games where they announced a joke expansion pack where you play as dog investigators thwarting a cat cult. And obviously it was amazing, right? I mean, the art assets for it were great. Dogs in trench coats in rainy alleyways, cats with tentacle shadows behind them. Who wouldn't love that? And apparently the fans clamored for it and they made it a real thing. So if you play Arkham Horror, the LCG, you can get this as like a standalone scenario and play it. And I've never played Arkham Horror LCG. I've just decided a while back that even though people keep recommending it, I'm just going to stick with Marvel Champions because I've now picked up 3 expansion packs for that.
Oh, have you now?
Yeah, something happened and I got them. But I don't really need another LCG in my life, right? I do kind of want to get it just to play this, though.
Yeah.
It's really cool and ridiculous and compelling. So if you're at all interested in Arkham Horror, the LCG, or anthropomorphic dogs and cat cults, check out the Barkham Horror expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. That's coming out. It just says sometime in 2020. I assume sometime this first quarter. So you can check out more about that on the Fantasy Flight website. Our second bit of news this week is that Tekhenu Obelisk of the Sun has been announced. This is a new game from Daniela Tascini and David Turchi, which is kind of a power combo these days. And if you're not familiar with Tascini, he is the guy who had a hand in Zulkan and I think Grand Austria Hotel and also Marco Polo. So very much an in-demand kind of designer these days. He has this new game coming out this year at, I assume, Essen, that is set in ancient Egypt. So we don't know too much about it, but it appears to be a dice drafting game where the board is divided up into these 6 quadrants. Not 6 quadrants, because quadrants is 4.
Right.
6 sections, each one named after a different Egyptian deity. And there's a big obelisk in the middle of the board that rotates and casts different sections of the board in complete darkness or partial darkness or leaves them fully exposed to Ra, the sun god. Depending on where you draft your dice from in each of those areas, you may have some dice locked out, so you can't access them at all. Some dice may be tainted if they're in the partial darkness, which will reduce your purity and you'll lose victory points for it. I don't know. I think it's a cool idea. Anything ancient Egypt still excites me more than other generic Euro themes.
Right. Not tapped into as much as the other ones.
No, it's really not. It probably will be overdone at some point.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. It'll come.
But for now, it looks pretty cool. The obelisk piece is a nice little centerpiece for the board in a way that I think they haven't really done since maybe Teotihuacan, because that was their kind of last big, the big wooden pyramid is really the central piece of the board. In the way that the gears were for Zulkan. So this looks cool and interesting and different. And if you love games from this designer, you probably already put it on your wish list, honestly, because that's the people who love these games are just rabid about them. So if you're at all interested in a solo-friendly Euro game with a solo mode from David Turchi, which is also a cool selling point, check out Tekhenu Obelisk of the Sun from Board and Dice Games. And our last bit of news for this week is kind of a weird one. Alexa, the Amazon assistant that allows the NSA to listen in on your conversations. Yeah, that one can play board games with you now.
So it just lulls us into a safe sense of security as Amazon becomes our new overlords, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you will feel nice and secure and comforted because you can now play Ticket to Ride and Ticket to Ride Europe with Alexa playing an AI opponent, which means you can play Ticket to Ride solo against Alexa. So this is not a direction that I expected gaming to go, but it's interesting to me. I probably won't ever try this because I don't have a need for an Alexa in my home. But I do think that it's interesting. You have to read the ticket cards that Alexa gets to her so that she knows what to do with them. So that does change up the feel of the game quite a bit because you're supposed to keep those hidden.
Right.
That's kind of a key part of the game. And I've also read that because Alexa doesn't know how to make a choice from the row of cards that's in front of you, train cards, you draw a card from the top of the deck, and I guess you have to tell her what she has or something like that. Anyway, however she draws cards from the train deck, it's not depleting the trains that are available as quickly. So that becomes a little stagnant. But otherwise, I guess it's a pretty interesting way to play the game. What may be more interesting for a lot of people is that you can get a rules recap from Alexa for this game, and she can tell you how to set it up. So if you don't want to sit there and reference the rule book over and over, you can just have this little Amazon assistant do it for you.
Yeah.
Is this anything you would ever do?
No, because I don't really desire to have an Alexa-based device or anything like that. And so it would be interesting, I guess, if I did have one to be able to like do rules reference or something like that. I don't know.
I'm not sure that I'll ever have one of those things, but if I did have one already, I would at least try this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you play board games, there's a pretty solid chance that you either have Ticket to Ride or know somebody who does. I'd be anxious to hear what you think about it. I mean, not you sitting across from me, but you all who are listening. I would be anxious to hear what you think. Also interesting is that apparently she can DM Starfinder for you, like the Pathfinder sci-fi game that's recently released. If you get the starter box for that, the campaign that comes in the starter box, she can DM a version of that for you.
Have you read anything about how that's gone? I imagine that's a little rough.
Yeah, well, I think your responses that she can understand are limited. And so I think it's a little more leading in terms of how it DMs a game of it for you. But apparently there's a surprising range of options that you can offer to it that she'll accept.
Okay.
So I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be worth picking up Starfinder, right, to try this out. But if you had Starfinder, I would give it a shot.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I mean, just to see, fight against some space goblins or something. So anyway, that's just kind of an off-the-wall bit of news. But if you have an Amazon Alexa and you have Ticket to Ride or Starfinder, give it a shot and let us know what you think. I'd love to hear from somebody other than like Forbes.
Right. Yeah.
Which is where I first heard about this. So that is all we've got for the news for this week. So we're just going to get right into the review in just a minute. First, I want to mention to you that this episode is sponsored or supported by or partnered with by Stone Valley Games. And Stone Valley Games is a place where you can buy board games online. And I know you're thinking to yourself, I have places like that. There are lots of places I can buy board games online. But listen, we already talked about how Amazon is slowly becoming your overlord. Consider other options, folks, especially with the plethora of counterfeit board games that are out on Amazon these days. It's always better to buy from somebody small, and not everybody has a local game store. So Stone Valley Games wants to be your friendly, distant game store. If you haven't checked out their website yet, you can go to stonevalleygames.com. They stock a wide range of solo-friendly games, which is really cool. And they also have a loyalty program, so if you buy games from them, you can get discounts on future purchases, and their prices are already competitive. So if you haven't checked them out, it's a really cool option, an alternative to buying games on Amazon. And they have a good online community that sprung up around the store, so you can follow them on Facebook, chat with other people about games, and find some of the community that is offered by a local game store, but in an online setting. So that is stonevalleygames.com. And remember, too, if you have friends or family who are in the U.S. military who are deployed, they do ship for free to deployed military folks. So check that out if you want to buy a gift for somebody who is serving overseas. All right, we are going to get right into the review for Tiny Epic Galaxies. Tiny Epic Galaxies is designed by Scott Alms and plays 1 to 5 players and is published by Gamelin Games and was released in 2015. In Tiny Epic Galaxies, every player controls a galactic empire, aiming to expand their influence by acquiring highly contested planets and increasing their cosmic armada. Players are going to colonize new planets throughout the game, thereby earning victory points and accumulating special abilities along the way, which they can activate for their galactic empire. So careful spending of resources are going to ensure the fastest growth of your empire, while also allowing you to receive the biggest possible payoff from the actions you take and make you the most powerful force in the galaxies, which is the whole point of the game. The player with the most victory points at the end is the winner. So let's just get right into the components for this game. And this is the only Tiny Epic game that I have played in its like regular Tiny Epic form, I guess. There was a version of Tiny Epic Heroes that was released that was called Ultra Tiny Epic.
Okay.
And came like in a deck box.
Okay.
So this is slightly bigger than that. But I would say that for a game of this size, the components are really solid.
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, it's a tiny game, so there's only going to be so much stuff. But yeah, I mean, they're just solid, good components. I don't know, little wooden pieces. They're nothing like fancy, but they're basic and serviceable.
Yeah, and even printed on them. They have like some of the little tokens have different icons printed on them, which look really nice.
Yeah.
And the cards are really good stock and linen finished and bright artwork and very clear graphic design too, which I think is a major plus for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything feels like it's just been gone over and it looks kind of elegant. The whole package is pretty elegant, I would say.
I would say so too.
And man, those dice.
Yeah, the dice are really nice.
They're sweet. I don't know if all the versions have this, but they're like a pearlescent kind of black with really well engraved, beautiful kind of custom icons on them that are very clear and easy to understand. Oof. I love custom dice cards.
I know, they're just so good.
Yeah. And this is kind of a silly thing, but when you empty the box, you have on the inside of the top lid, you can use as a dice tray. They actually label it a dice tray and give it a cool space background for you. And then the bottom of the box has some rules clarifications and frequently asked questions.
Yeah, there's just like, those are the simple little like touches that people can put into production that are just really nice and I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think too, it's just the benefit of working in a similar format and size for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they've clearly done this many times over, and I don't know what printing of this game this is, but it feels like it's made by an established publisher.
Yeah.
So everything in this package for me is really nice, and I think the rules are as well.
Yeah, they're simple, they're straightforward, it's laid out well. I don't know what else to say about them other than that. They're just, they're basic and in a very good way.
Yeah, they do have the solo setup and everything at the back of the book, so it's not mixed in with the setup for the base game.
Right.
But this is not one of those worst case offenders where the setup section tells you to set up the game one way, and then when you get to the solo rules, it says, oh, actually, you need to change this, this, and this. How do you feel about it when the games do that, Carter?
I mean, I love it. I mean, I would have liked it if they just kind of put a parenthetical, like, if you're playing solo, set it up like a 2-player game. And then they can give the finer details in the solo section. But, like you said, it's when there's like so many exceptions in all these different places, like that's really obnoxious. But that's not happening here.
No, this works really well because it has the setup in the beginning for a normal game. So you set up your board like normal. And then when it's time to set up the AI board, the instructions are in the solo section. And the solo rules are like 2 pages. It changes a little bit how the AI will handle the different actions in the game, but because it's only on 2 pages, you can keep the rulebook open. My copy at least lays flat pretty easily, and it makes a nice little solo player aid.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is a really nice, tight little package production-wise. And as far as play is concerned, the whole thing is really pretty simple, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's taking the ideas of, empire building in space and has boiled it down to about as simple as you can go, I would say.
Yeah, it's not quite like a King of Tokyo kind of mechanism. You don't roll the dice 3 times or anything like that. But it has this simple kind of, you roll a pool of dice, you look at the icons on them, those are your actions for the turn, and you activate them in whatever order you want. You get 1 free reroll whenever you roll these dice. And you can actually pay some of your resources to reroll as many times as you want, basically, until you run out of this resource. But that's a pretty simple concept for a game that we've seen in plenty of other places.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can reference King of Tokyo easily, but if you want to look at the opposite end of the spectrum, War of the Ring basically uses the same system. So it's a tried and true kind of system that I think works really well in this format. The basic setup of the game is you're going to look at your little Galaxy player mat, And you have these different tracks on there that show you start out at level 1 at the beginning of the game, a level 1 empire. And at level 1, you get, let's say, 4 dice. I don't remember how many you get to start off. And 2 ships. Okay, so as you increase in level over the course of the game, you're going to get more and more dice to use, which means more actions, and more ships, which we will use to colonize planets. So your little player mat is very simple, easy to read, simple to set up. There's only a couple of pieces on there. And all you're really going to be tracking is energy, culture, and the level of your empire. And that's pretty much it.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, it's very simple in that way.
But just because it's simple doesn't mean that the decisions are uninteresting.
No, very interesting, hard decisions. Well, I don't know about hard. It's like you think through it, you're trying to make the best choices. It's a satisfying level of thinking. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, because basically what you're thinking through is there are a few planets set out in front of you, and each planet has its own kind of special ability associated with it. It can generate energy or culture for you, and depending on which planet you're looking at, it does one or the other. And then each of them also has a little track around the outside, which is how long it'll take you to colonize this planet. And so once you have these cards set out in the middle of the table, you are going to roll the dice on your turn, look at the icons that you've got, and then take the actions that are pictured on those. And the order that you take them in really does matter. That's a key decision because you can come up with really great little combos that won't be possible if you don't think through the order of your action. That's sort of the central decision tension on your turn, I guess.
Right.
Is deciding how to be the most efficient with your action order.
Right. And how much you want to push your luck too. Because it's like, okay, well, I could do this and this would be safer. Or, I can just keep 1 or 2 actions and then try to like shoot the moon and get a high roll on something and get a lot done.
Yeah, I really like that. When I first heard about this, I wasn't sure where the fun was, because the idea that you just get your actions for the turn decided for you is contrary to how most Euro games work, right? The point of your turn is picking which actions you want to do. But reducing your decision space to just what order do I want to take these actions in is a different kind of tension, really. It doesn't just rob you of agency. The puzzle becomes not what should I do, but how can I do the most with what I have in front of me.
I tend to like those types of choices too.
And just probably not for you either.
This is what I have. How can I maximize this?
Yeah, I do too. Especially when it's part of a system that doesn't make you feel like you're just barely scraping by for the entire game.
Right.
And this game doesn't make me feel that way.
Right, yeah.
I feel like I get a lot done. And part of the reason for that is because the actions are pretty powerful. So you have 6 different actions that you can take. The first one is move. So you can take ships that are on your player mat and actually use them to do stuff. So you can either land on a planet and take the special ability of that planet. Just a nice little kind of cool action that you can do on your turn.
Yeah, it could be like steal resources from another player, allow you to reroll all of your dice for free. I mean, it ranges among a lot of different things.
Yeah, and they're all cool and interesting and different. And there's quite a few cards in the game.
Yeah.
And then you leave your ship there, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. Or you can move your ship onto one of the tracks orbiting one of these planets. And the reason you would want to do that is that on future rolls, if you get a certain icon, you can advance along this track. And when you get to the end of it, you get to claim that planet for your own. And the nice thing about that is the planet's going to earn you victory points, obviously. But also, you get to tuck that planet card underneath your player board. And now there's a special power that you can activate with another face of the die. And for me, that's like one of the coolest parts of the game.
Yeah, it's a neat little, I guess, correlation between getting more powerful and also getting closer to victory. It's like you're like, increasing your empire, which is nice.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't need every game to be an engine building game, right? Like I think that's its own kind of class of game. Mm-hmm. But I do need to feel like I've grown and changed during the course of the game. Or at least my game state and my decision space needs to change over the course of the game. And I need to feel like I get better.
Right. You have a couple more options. And just like a thematic kind of, like, this game isn't really heavily thematic, but it is, you're getting bigger and more powerful. You can do more things. It's not really engine building, but just more interesting options you can take. Because it's not going to break the game. It's not like that level of power, but it's neat little bonuses to maximize each turn you have.
Yeah, I really like it. It's a cool little addition to the game that I don't think they needed to put in necessarily, but because they did, it feels like icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's not necessary, but it's a cool addition. So you can move your ships onto planets. You can start moving up those tracks with 2 other faces of the dice to start colonizing the planets. You can roll different sides of the dice for either energy or culture. And what's neat to me about this is, I guess when I first saw that this was a mechanic in the game, I assumed that every die you roll would just get you 1 energy or get you 1 culture. But that's not how it works.
Right, yeah. Just getting your ships to the planets that corresponds with whatever resource you're trying to get, you can really kind of maximize like, oh, I want to try to get a lot of culture or I want to try to get a lot of energy. And it's just another little layer to contemplate of how you want to make the most of your turn or possibly set up a following turn.
Yeah, you roll a culture symbol and you get to add up all the different planets that have that culture symbol that have your ship on them or orbiting them.
Right.
And that seems like a small thing, but, with 1 die, you might be able to get 3 culture if you plan ahead properly.
Right.
And the benefit for getting like energy and culture is energy lets you re-roll your dice, which is incredibly powerful in any kind of dice-based game, and also allows you to upgrade your empire and increase the level of your empire, which gets you more dice and more ships so you can colonize more planets and basically build your little engine up even more.
Right.
So I really like that. What's really cool to me is the culture mechanism. And it's not like this is new, but you can spend a culture on another player's turn to follow whatever action they've just taken. So if they use one of their dice to move, you can spend a culture and then you can also move after they've done, which is so good.
Yeah, it's one of those types of resources that's it's easy to get caught up in just making the most of your turn right then. But man, getting to take that many extra actions also, that feels amazing. And you're just like you get a lot done by actually investing in culture.
Yeah, and so it ends up feeling like, man, I got a lot accomplished on this turn. It feels good because you're actually paying attention to what your opponents are doing if you're playing a multiplayer game, and you care about what happens on their turn. And you care about stockpiling culture because getting more actions in a Euro game, that's everything.
Right, exactly.
So I really like that little system that you can place your ships in such a way that makes you think about more than just which one gets me the most victory points, but maybe which one helps me get the most culture. Because in the long run, that might actually be better for you.
Right.
Right. Or the most energy if you want to level up more quickly. Really neat little system that they've got going there. And then you've got a side of the die that lets you use those special abilities that you got on other turns when you finish colonizing planets. And that's really the entire game. If you're playing a multiplayer game, the first player to 21 points is going to end the game. And then in the multiplayer game, you have these little secret mission cards that you get at the beginning. Everybody flips them up at the end. If you fulfilled the objectives on there, you get extra points. Whoever has the most points wins the game. I have played a multiplayer game of this one time, a 2-player game. The whole thing took maybe a half hour, if that. And there was good tension playing multiplayer because you are trying to jockey with other players for these limited number of planets. So it's like kind of a race to see who will colonize it first because you got multiple ships competing on these colony tracks. And you don't want to waste multiple dice turns having tried to burn your way up these tracks only to lose, right? So I really liked that. So there's a cool tension between, like, do I place my ships on the track or do I place them on the planet itself? I really like all of that. It worked really well. And the nice thing for me is it works just as well in a solo game.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just they're neat little interlocking systems, and you really don't lose that at all. I say that. I never played it multiplayer. I only played it solo. But from what you're describing and what my own experience was, yeah, I feel like you get all of that same stuff. Because in the solo game, you just have your turn that you would take as normal. I think the only difference really that you could associate with yourself is you don't have the bonus goals.
Yeah, that's right. You don't get those secret mission cards at the beginning.
But other than that, you will be taking the AI's turn for it. But as opposed to where you're going to roll all of your dice at the same time and choosing what order you use them or re-roll them, the AI just rolls one at a time and you do that action as it comes. So it's simple and straightforward. You can blow through it. And then also, it's meaningful to you because if you have culture, then you can ride off of those actions and get to do a little bit extra. So it's still like somewhat engaging. And there's almost kind of like a drama to it in you're rolling the dice and you're like, how bad am I going to get hosed? Because you're just doing it one at a time and seeing what happens.
Oh, yeah. And the AI is just better than you at several things. Like it will get both culture and energy for having ships on its mat. You know, so it collects both things at once. It's definitely better at that than you. It has special powers for when it rolls the symbol that lets you make use of your colony cards that you've gained to use those special powers. You know, it doesn't worry about collecting cards and using those special abilities because that would be just one more thing to track. Instead, it has a special ability printed on the card that lets you do its special colony action. And that changes depending on what the level of the galaxy is. So I really like that, you know, you've got this special power that gets stronger and stronger as the game goes by. And so it makes you feel frightened a little bit whenever you see it level up because you know that, oh man, now whenever it rolls that die, this thing is going to get even worse for me.
Right. And it's also ticking along closer to it winning. Just if it gets to upgrade its galaxy enough times, it just wins.
Yeah. I feel like that's really kind of the perfect balance for me between an interesting AI system and one that's very simple to manage. Because seriously, it is just a matter of rolling each die and then reading what it says on the card for a couple of those dice.
Right.
Everything that you need to know is either on that one section of the rulebook, which you can lay flat and reference easily, or it's already printed on the card. And here's the really bonkers thing. Each of the 5 Galaxy mats that you can use as your own player card in the game, on the back side of it has a different galaxy, like a rogue galaxy AI that you can play against.
And they increase in difficulty for each one.
Yeah. And that means like their abilities are slightly different. And definitely I feel the increase in difficulty when I play against them.
Yeah, I felt pretty good when I first played against the beginner one because I was like, oh yeah, I won. It was fine. I don't know how like hard this can get. But yeah, if you start increasing the difficulty, the challenge rating definitely goes up.
Yeah, it definitely goes up. I only made it through like the mid-level one before I felt like I was smacking up against a wall. Mm-hmm. But I did feel like I could have made better decisions and I could get good over time in a way that maybe I could challenge those higher difficulty ones. It's not like other games we've played, like, why would you ever want to play on hard or very hard mode?
I don't know, man. The hardest galaxy seems kind of bonkers.
Yeah, but maybe if you're the kind of person who plays this a lot, there's just a lot of room to grow there.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is the kind of game that you can knock out quickly enough that if you're really into it and you like it, you could play it a lot.
That's true. I mean, yeah, you can really burn through these games. I would say, I'm trying to think for me solo, about 30 minutes on average, I think, each time.
Yeah, that seems fair for me. And the setup time's really quick.
Yeah.
Doesn't take much to set up. The rule book is slim, so it's not like you've got a ton of stuff you have to relearn. I mean, I could see, if you like this game, I could see people getting it out very regularly to play. So all of that is really neat and just keeps you engaged on the AI's turns. And those turns also aren't long. One other little touch that I thought was really cool is that you can spend an energy and a culture to make the galaxy re-roll the die that it just rolled.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That is really nice.
It's so good. It's one thing to give you the opportunity to mitigate your own dice, which I think a game like this has to do.
Right.
But to give you the chance to do it on the AI's turn is just like one more little decision because spending a culture and an energy is a big ask.
Yeah.
Because a culture is a big deal. I mean, that's a whole action you're giving up.
Right.
Plus the potential of leveling up your galaxy even more. But there are times when that could be the thing that keeps you from losing the game.
Right. Yeah. Because there's times where it's like, I need this planet to win the game, or just like other things that you've planned or worked towards. And you've just got to make sure that they're not able to colonize that planet before you.
Yeah, and then there's still the drama, too, of like maybe you spin both of those things and make it re-roll, and it still rolls the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Some people will probably find that frustrating. I think it's great. It walks that perfect line that I've found that I enjoy more and more of, like having enough agency that I feel like things aren't just running away from me, but also enough luck that there's some real drama in the game.
Right, yeah. I agree.
So it's... all in all, it's just a really solid little package.
Yeah, there's a lot there for such a small and just kind of speedy game.
Yeah. In fact, I think it's probably time for us to move to that part of the review where we sum up the good, the bad, and the ugly for this game. And for me, one of the good things I would say here is component quality and production is really nice. It's not like the nicest game you'll ever play, but it is a well-produced little game that you really can take with you to a lot of different venues, and also that will work with a lot of different groups if you do decide to play this with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people out there do game almost exclusively solo, but there are also a lot of people who like their games to be versatile enough that they can handle a multiplayer game if they need to. I think this one does both admirably.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty, I feel like, low bar to entry as far as like complexity, and also just intimidating to people who maybe aren't as like into board gaming as others.
Yeah. Yeah. It walks a good balance between interesting decisions and simple rule set. It gives you a good sense of growth as you move through the game. And that solo system is solid. It's simple, but has a good amount of variability and replayability there. And I don't know, it's a good game.
Yeah.
As far as things that are bad about this game, I think that thematically, there's just not that much going on. It does feel a little bit generic sci-fi.
Yeah.
For me. I mean, there's nothing thematically. I don't look at this game and think, oh, I want to go conquer planets. I think that's a really solid little set of mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the abilities are cool, and like it definitely has some theme there, but it doesn't give me that like vivid, kind of imagery or like, strong feelings of expanding a sprawling space empire.
Right. Exactly. And I would also say too that you do lose some of the tension from the multiplayer game. Not much, but when you play against the AI, it does things so much better than you do that sometimes you can feel like, well, this thing's just going to colonize the planet faster than me. I can't possibly catch up. Whereas you're more evenly matched to the other players in a multiplayer game. That's a small thing, but I think for some people that might be something they don't like, is constantly feeling behind when they're competing for something. And I do kind of miss the secret goals in the solo mode. I kind of wish those were still relevant. I understand why they're not, though. That would add another layer of complexity to the AI, trying to get it to work toward the goals that matter to it. But that's a small thing.
Yeah, it's a small thing. I don't know like a really like clean way to integrate it. And like right now, their kind of AI system, I feel like, is very clean and kind of streamlined.
Yeah, I agree. And I do kind of wish there were asymmetrical player powers to spice up the games a little bit. Now, I should say here, I know there's an expansion for this game called Beyond the Black, and I have not played that expansion. So my understanding is that it does add those player powers. So that's probably really cool. And if you like this game, you should definitely check out that expansion, because I've heard nothing but great things about it. But I've just never had any experience with it. So that part of it is missing from this basic box. So if you're interested in that, you can find the expansion online. The MSRP for the deluxe edition, which includes the Kickstarter stuff, is $30, which is about as much as the base game. Mm-hmm. But I mean, just based on what we're looking at online, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, it seems like it adds a lot of stuff that will just help with replayability and things of that like.
Yeah. So, I mean, if that's something that you're interested in, check that out. But we didn't have a copy of that to include in the review. And honestly, you don't need it. Mm-hmm. It's just nice to have after you've played several games of this. And there's nothing that I would consider to be ugly about this game.
No, not at all.
Now, that said, this is not a stomp of approval game for me. And probably not for you either.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've said this before, but any kind of like really small box game, well, I think they can be great and I can really like them a lot. It's going to be hard for any of those to pretty much ever get the stomp of approval from me. It's just like, I think I just like start to wane on them after the more playthroughs I do.
Yeah, and it's not like we haven't given it to small box games, because we have Star Realms Frontiers, which was done with a guest reviewer, and Black Sonata, which you and I reviewed together. I would both consider those small box games. Mm-hmm. But for me, I guess as you think about whether this is a game for you, it's probably worth thinking about what you want from a small box game. For me, I'm not prejudiced against them at all, but I don't want to just solo play a filler game. Right. I want the small box games to have something really alluring and compelling and different or meaty about them. It needs to be a destination game for me. not just a filler. That's probably your issue with these as well, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, Black Sonata there's nothing else out there like it. Like
right.
in terms of solo games, big box or not, there aren't that many deduction games out there. And it's just wildly different from anything else I've played. And so it stands out to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, nothing else feels like it. And it's not just like a random filler that other things could easily kind of scratch the same itch.
Yeah. And so for me, like if I have free time at the end of the evening, I don't always necessarily want to play a game. If I'm in the mood for a game, then it could be a small box game or a big box game, as long as it's one of those that like calls to me from the shelf. I'm not the kind of person that's like, no matter what in the evenings, I'm not going to play a video game or watch TV. I'm going to play a game. So if I was, I'd probably have a lot more small box games on my shelf, and a lot more than would be stomp worthy for me, maybe. But that's just not how I spend my free time necessarily.
It would be roughly the same for me also. I think for this, the more I played it, the harder it would be for it to win out over me just doing something else that's even easier to initiate.
Yeah, I think that's true for me too. And that's why, stomp of approval games for us are games that we really love and want to play more and are excellent solo experiences. So I just don't love the game. I really like it and I admire it. And I think it's a great design.
Mm-hmm. I think it works well solo too.
Yeah, I think it works really well solo. And I would heartily recommend this to you. If you are looking for a game that has a space theme, you don't mind that it's not overly thematic, and you just want something light and casual that you can play on a weeknight or something and get out with your friends on occasion who maybe aren't as into games or like quicker games, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
For sure. There's a reason that it's widely considered the best Tiny Epic game, and widely considered kind of I don't know if solo classic is the right word, but like a top tier casual small box solo game.
Mm-hmm.
It really is as good as people say. There's not that one really captivating thing about it that makes me love it. That's not a knock against the game at all. If you are looking for something like that, I would say this is right up your alley and go for it. But it's just not one of those I'm in love with this games.
Yeah, it's the same for me.
Yeah. So that's our review of Tiny Epic Galaxies. If you are interested in this game, we're going to be doing a giveaway for it. So you can go and check out our Facebook page for more information on how to enter that. So go and check us out on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find us on Instagram at Solosaurus Podcast and try to win a copy of this game for yourself. If you haven't yet heard, we are a member of the Dice Tower Network. So if you like this show and you want to find other shows about board games, you can go to dicetower.com and find more information about all the different shows on the Dice Tower Network. And there are a lot of them out there. So go and check that out. Also, if you haven't yet gotten a Solosaurus micro badge, we have those. If you're on BGG, you may have gotten a coupon code recently. At the beginning of every year, BGG gives away some codes to give you 3 free micro badges. Ours is one of the ones you should consider getting. If you've already spent them and are really wishing that you had held out for one of our badges, don't despair. We will give you one for free. So if you don't have the Geek Gold for one, just send me a message and I'll be happy to spot you so that you can get that little yellow and purple dinosaur for yourself. And that's all we've got for this episode. Till next time, I am Brandon Waite.
And I'm Carter Mackey.
And this is Solosaurus.